Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio program, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder, and our program today is on the subconscious mind, the amazing powers that the subconscious mind possesses.
We know there is such a thing. You know, Freud often gets credit for this, but as I mentioned in our newsletter for the week, it really goes back long before Freud, to the beginning of time, if you consider researchers or philosophers, anybody who is contemplative in ancient days would realize that when we go to sleep, there is some part of our mind that continues working, that breathes us and that beats the heart and digests food, repairs, replaces cells, fights disease, maintains body temperature and blood pressure, and Lord knows how many hundreds of other responses it tends to regulate. So you can imagine with this simple construct alone, I become unconscious and yet part of me continues to operate. I didn't die when I fell asleep. Some part of me was still alive, still alert. That is the birth and the origin of the subconscious mind. I think one of the funny things about this, Steve, is given this approach to understanding the subconscious, that prefix sort of suggests that it's inferior or below the normal conscious mind, but in many ways, the subconscious mind is superior to the conscious self.
Yeah, for a long time, this was called the unconscious part of our mind, and then we came to understand that, I think it was yogis that showed us that you can actually control your heartbeat or your autonomic processes with the power of your mind, and so it's not, unconscious, it's just below the level of consciousness. One of the easiest ways to describe the subconscious mind is by describing what it isn't, and what it isn't is just the conscious part of us, the part that is paying attention to whatever we're seeing, hearing, smelling, feeling, tasting, touching, and thinking right now, right at this very instant in time. And the subconscious mind is virtually everything else. It's a whole lot of different things. We basically think there are 5 primary things that the subconscious mind is in charge of, and we'd like to talk about those today.
And before we begin to move down the list of 1 through 5, the main faculties or abilities, if you will, of the subconscious, the powers of the subconscious mind, I want to see if we can create for you a kind of a visual. Again, even though the word suggests that the subconscious is below, somehow inferior to the conscious mind, in many ways it is superior. It's actually where the higher self and many of the better parts of us are located. One of the best models I've ever seen, my friend right here, Steve Snyder, introduced me to. And Steve, maybe you can explain it, where we see concentric circles representing the mind itself, and then the part that's subconscious and the part that's the conscious mind, and you had that dotted line separating the two like a filter. Do you remember how you
I do, but an even, I think, easier, more three-dimensional way to describe it is that the conscious mind is the Earth's crust, and the subconscious mind is everything inside of that, from the very core magna all the way out to, say, the outer layer is the conscious mind. We're born just subconscious. There's no conscious mind when you're born. No logic, no reasoning, no willpower, no deductive skills, just subconscious when you're born. And over the first about 8 years of our lives, the conscious mind forms around the subconscious, kind of like the cooling of the earth, and the crust forms around it. The conscious mind forms around the subconscious mind and sort of takes over the maturation process. It becomes intellectually more mature. It grows up, whereas the subconscious emotionally stays a child in some ways. The conscious part is the part that continues to grow up, and it pays attention to the outside world, and it has the ego part of us. But the conscious mind is really a pretty small part of the whole thing. The subconscious mind makes up, some say 88, some say 90% of the mind's power.
So this is good. So if the conscious mind, the part that we identify as self, although it's really pretty much limited to the ego, is the crust, then that sort of fits. That means like the consciousness that we wake up with in the morning and tend to lose by all appearances as we go to sleep at night is really just a matter of appearances. It's that outer shell. It's the candy coating on the M&M.
There you go. It's the skin on the human being.
Right. So it really is an appearance of things. And the actual mind goes much deeper, maybe 10 times deeper, and this is where the best parts of us tend to be hidden behind fears. And remember, fear, anxiety, worry, doubt always represents something you don't know. So that which you need to know would be hidden behind it, right? Doesn't it make sense that you would have to face your fear or look directly at what you don't understand in order to understand it? Well, that's why as we learn to access the subconscious, it's like a mining adventure or exploring a canyon or going where no one has gone before to a whole new planet, because the mind becomes so much more clear. We get also much more sensitive to our emotions. And I would say sensitive even, Steve, to a feeling that transcends any kind of physical sensation or even the most refined emotional feeling. There is a spiritual sensitivity. If we quiet the mind, still the body, calm the emotions, there's something else, this higher element.
You know, as you talk about the subconscious mind and what it isn't the conscious mind, but what it also isn't is a higher consciousness. It's just the conduit to it. The subconscious mind is the way to this other level of thinking, this other mind we have, this higher consciousness, the part that can observe the subconscious and the conscious mind and notice what they both are doing and observe it without judgment and just to be the witness of it. That ability we have to step outside our conscious and subconscious minds with this higher consciousness. The conduit to that is through the subconscious mind. You can't logically get there. You must let go and release, go to and then through the subconscious mind to get to the part that's connected to this even higher consciousness, which connects to everybody else's higher consciousness as well.
Well, that makes sense. So what you're saying in one context is emotional love leads to spiritual love. The lower heart is a doorway or portal to the higher heart, which is the true and genuine self we always say you can only find in paradise. When you move into this alpha brainwave level, when we relax and meditate and turn our attention away from physical senses, here comes the light, here comes the dawning, here comes that warmth, and that often carries information, insight, understanding, a better sense of who we are and what we're for. Problems, practical, everyday problems can be solved just by sitting quietly and waiting for this expanded awareness to come upon us. I'm afraid most people still are not aware of that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. When you let the subconscious mind feel safe, then it lets go of its basic desires in exchange to have aspirations, to aspire. It doesn't want stuff. It wants to be better. It wants to grow. It wants to become the best it can be. And that kind of desiring doesn't bring any suffering. It's the kind of desiring of wanting stuff that brings the pain in our lives. So what happens is as we get free, as the subconscious mind quiets and calms, the conscious mind understands that there's no danger here, so the ego can be quiet, and then the higher self can emerge. We find out the best parts of ourselves in those places we don't normally have the opportunity to look. We find gifts, talents, abilities we've never sought before, all through this portal of the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is always there, but when the conscious mind is busy, when it's occupied, when it's doing a bunch of stuff, then all of the subconscious mind is autopilot, and you're not really in charge of any of it. It's just doing what it does. It's habit. But what we're saying, and what we've always said, is that if you slow down a little bit and get out of your conscious mind a little bit and find yourself in paradise a little bit, then what happens is the subconscious mind becomes a whole different thing. When here you are now conscious of your subconscious mind, here you are now the conscious mind interplaying with the subconscious and can direct it, conduct it, orchestrate it, choreograph it. It can do what it wants with it. It's a whole other ballgame when you quiet and open up this filter, this reticular activating system that goes between the conscious and subconscious mind. As you move into this alpha state in paradise, then the two minds come together and they can interact, and as they co-create together this higher consciousness, you can observe what they're co-creating.
Well, then, working with this mind map that we've created, we're living here on the surface of the entire mind, on top of the Earth's crust, which represents the ego and the conscious mind. How do we get through that thin layer to the subconscious mind, which is the bulk of what remains, where all the hidden treasure, there's gold and diamonds and all kinds of insight and understanding available. Steve just told you about a reticular activating system that opens, that dilates as we relax. In other words, if you close your eyes to help yourself feel safe, take a few slow, deep breaths to help you feel safe, and then begin to feel a sense of receptivity, of vulnerability maybe, of being open to subtleties of awareness. As you sit more and more quietly, something opens. It's as if the light begins to come on, and here you are sitting in the darkness with your eyes closed, but there's an inner light that allows you to see what's been right in front of your face all along, maybe your entire life, depending on the nature of the revelation. And now you have enough light, inner light, don't you see? Awareness, consciousness. You've heard higher awareness, expanded consciousness. It's an inner light that allows you to see what's been here all along. You just didn't recognize it. You didn't see it. Now it comes to you. And this can be from the most existential and esoteric concept right down to practical solutions for your daily problems, and also the kind of understanding that can really heal a heart.
So learning how to interact between the conscious and subconscious is really one of the most important keys here. And because when we do unlock the subconscious, when we do get out of our stress state, when we do, technically it's no more difficult than moving a little bit of the way towards sleep, basically just slowing down the mind a little bit, closing the eyes, feeling safe. We open up this filter, and now we have access to the subconscious mind, which is so much more than the conscious. I mean, in so many ways, but take a look at this one particular way. One of the aspects of subconscious mind is the memory. All of the memory that you have, all the long-term memory, all the stuff that you've ever experienced and paid attention to that's in there in that long-term memory, that's all in there. That's not in your conscious mind. At any moment, you can bring up a bit here, a teeny bit there, but you've got all those years, perhaps decades and decades of data in there, and that's all in the subconscious part of your mind. The conscious mind only holds whatever you're thinking about now. The subconscious holds everything else. And you remember a million things for every one thing you forget. So there's lots of stuff in there. There's lots and lots of stuff. And it's not all like stored as one collection in one place. This is a series of firing neurons that work in harmony in all parts of the brain that bring up smells and tastes and sights. And remember that memory isn't exactly what happened. It's your perception of what happened, and then it's your remembering the last time you remembered what happened, and that changed it a little bit. So there's lots of creativity. There's lots of imagination in memory. But all of that is in the incredible, virtually infinite depths of the subconscious mind.
Yeah, a more common way to talk about this is short-term and long-term memory. The conscious mind, again, the part that wakes up in the morning and goes to sleep at night, that's, in a sense, said simply, your short-term memory. And one of the things that sleep researchers are beginning to discover is this is when memories are sorted, and some move to the long-term memory of the subconscious mind overnight while you sleep. And you can think of it as like the difference between RAM on your computer and the hard drive. The conscious mind is RAM. Again, at the end of the day, you turn the computer off and the RAM is flushed. That was just holding the day's work, right? It's the hard drive that's the long-term memory, your internal hard drive or your backup hard drive. That's like the subconscious mind.
So waking up in the morning is rebooting your whole mind together.
In fact, if you think about that hard drive then going out through a modem out onto the internet, you've got a sense of the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind, the difference between RAM and everybody's computer wired through the internet. That's what we're talking about in the subconscious mind. Steve just named the first of the 5 basic faculties or abilities of the subconscious mind. That's memory. That's where the information gets stored, the long-term information, and it's really a function of emotional impact. If it's high emotional amplitude, whether it's oh boy or oh no, something wonderful or something horrible, that's more likely to be remembered long-term than something that just happened incidentally.
Yeah, memory is primarily based on another of the faculties of the subconscious mind, which is emotion. Memory is primarily based on emotions. You remember what you love and you remember what you hate. You remember what scares you and excites you. What you don't remember is what you're bored by, apathetic about, or indifferent to. So it's about emotion. Now this is important because not only is an individual memory based on emotion, like you're more likely to remember something that you were powerfully affected by than something you were not affected by, but your whole memory itself, your whole basic memory itself is based on your emotional relationship with it. It's as good as you think it is. And the biggest thing that people do is they ignore their memory except when it does something wrong. I mean, they basically take it for granted. They expect it to work, and when it doesn't work, then they're upset. Then they pay a whole lot of attention to when it doesn't work. And so the memory being a function of this subconscious mind, which is very much like a child, the subconscious mind, the child wants attention. And so if the memory can't get attention for doing stuff right, it'll do stuff wrong. So what we need to do is give it an opportunity by generally, every time you think about your memory as a whole, what you want is a shot of dopamine. What you want is your brain to send out some receptors that say, send good stuff, serotonin, dopamine, send the happy chemicals into the brain. Every time you think about your memory and how it works, you want it to be happy chemicals that your brain produces instead of those, oh, my memory, every time I think about my memory, I think about the time I didn't remember this or I failed to do that. And then it sends these negative chemicals into your brain, adrenaline and sugar and things that make you feel a little jittery. So what we want to do is we want to recreate our subconscious experience of our memory overall, loving your memory, because after all, it is, I believe, probably your single most valuable possession.
So memory and the seat of emotions, we're saying, is in the subconscious mind, working 24/7, always alert. Not awake the way the conscious mind phases in and out of consciousness, but always operating. The autopilot, again, that runs all of your response systems, the breathing, the blood pressure and body temperature. I named a whole bunch of them a few minutes ago. Well, that would be a third function, vital function indeed, of the subconscious mind to keep you alive when you're unconscious. When you're asleep or somebody hits you over the head with a brick and you passed out for a while or you fainted, some autopilot's got to be in charge. That, of course, is going to be in the subconscious. That means the ability to heal, whether it's injury or illness, fighting disease, and also, as you learn to access this third faculty, pain management and accelerated healing. You may not get the kind of control that would allow you to put every illness and disease into remission, but the influence is really significant, and we've talked about it in past programs, future programs also. We'll talk more about pain management and its effect on accelerated healing, but this would have to be a third area, including, again, the as I mentioned, body temperature, blood pressure, and what else, Stephen? Digesting food and all of these reactions that are going on 24/7.
Yeah, so all the automatic stuff that your mind always does is all done in the subconscious mind. Breathing can be done either way. You can breathe subconsciously, it can just happen, or you can purposely choose to take a breath. Blinking happens just to keep your eyes wet, but you can purposely blink. There are things that are done subconsciously you can consciously do, but generally speaking, if you don't think about them, they're done by the subconscious mind. So we've got emotion, and we've got memory, and we've got the autonomic nervous system. Now, the next thing that the subconscious mind does that it's in charge of, given the conscious mind is the mind that thinks with logic and reasoning, the subconscious is the mind of creativity and imagination. This is the mind that makes stuff up. This is the mind that figures stuff out in non-logical ways. This is the mind that dreams at night and is all of the amazing fantasy and creativity and imagination that your mind is capable of creating.
Yep. As a matter of fact, imagination is a good word for describing the entire subconscious mind, if you wanted one synonym. And the synonym then for the conscious mind would be will, as in free will or willpower. That's another way of describing this most fundamental relationship. The conscious mind that is your willpower, your free will, your volition, your intention, your purpose, okay? You set an intention and you go do it. That's free will. Well, subconscious, the imagination. And imagination plays a role in each of these areas. Is not memory merely imagining yourself being there again? Of course, memory is rooted in imagination. How about emotions? This is an area that certainly deserves some reflection. To what extent do you suppose your ability to perceive emotional feelings and the moods, the emotional weather, if you will, that rolls through your nature, how much of that do you suppose comes from the imagination? It's just a synonym for the subconscious mind, the imagination. And then we talked about how do you interrupt an autonomic process and choose to hold your breath or deliberately breathe or blink, even though your ability to influence heartbeat or blood pressure or body temperature is much less. You do it by exerting an intention, your free will. And as long as you can imagine doing it, then the free will is empowered by the imagination. More on this in a minute. The two minds need to be aligned. If you will to do something you cannot imagine, you're going to be at cross purposes. You're going to have a real problem. If you have a strong desire to stop smoking cigarettes, for example, you're determined to do it this time. But secretly, in the subconscious mind, you just can't really imagine yourself without cigarettes. You've never really taken the time to form images in the mind's eye of you without a cigarette. And sometimes people will say, well, I sure would like to quit, but I just can't imagine it. Hey, if you can't imagine it, you can't have it. Talk about knowledgeable people. It was Einstein that said imagination is even more important than knowledge. Imagine that coming from Albert Einstein. He knew imagination was seminal to the search for knowledge.
I think maybe the best example was the plank. You lay a plank on the floor 10 feet long, 8 inches wide, and say, walk on the plank, and anybody can do that. Take the same plank and put it 100 feet in the air and say, now walk out. Now, I could be really determined. You could even pay me lots of money. I could be really determined. But if I imagine falling off that plank, then that's what's likely to happen. Even though I could do it on the ground, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't think of doing it in the air because my mind keeps going to the idea of the ramifications of falling. So the imagination is more powerful than knowledge. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if you take a look at anybody's life and all their dreams and aspirations and what they actually do, you will see that what they imagine is much greater, much grander in almost every case than anything they ever actually accomplished, because the actual taking the steps, the actual bringing it to the physical reality takes bringing the two minds together. You can't do that with just your imagination. But you can't also do it without your imagination. You know, nothing can happen. Everything in the world was discovered, invented, created in some woman or some man's imagination. It all started there. You know, outside Mother Nature herself, everything else is a creation of the subconscious mind and the imagination. And this is, I think, maybe the most powerful aspect of the whole subconscious mind is its ability to be a creator, to create reality through perception and response.
Yeah, you know, a classic metaphysical understanding of this all around the world is that, and you've heard it said in the Judeo-Christian tradition in Genesis, as God created man in our image. It's actually a plural, interestingly. You could say in its image or in his image, but it actually says in our image. And if then the divine created the universe and then created us, then we're the ones that are doing the creating thereafter. And doesn't that make sense? I mean, we got here and we had the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, and we're at the top of the food chain. Now we have an imagination. Right? There's no evidence that animals and plants and minerals have an imagination. It's a higher brain function. To be able to conceive of things that don't yet exist and then bring them into imagination.
Well, I know my dog knows it's time for dinner. Now, is he conceiving something that doesn't exist?
Memory, I'd say.
Maybe it's memory.
So let's go over the first four again. We've got memory. We talked about emotions. We talked about the autonomic nervous system. And Steve's mentioned creativity as a function of imagination. The fifth one is real similar to creativity, I think, and that's the big picture, conceptual understanding, the whole enchilada.
Yeah, the opposite of the details, the ability to step back and see how all the pieces fit together, what the overriding concept is, what the view from 5,000 feet might be. The idea that the conscious mind solves problems through like a take-apart kind of process, looking at each individual detail. What the subconscious tends to do is a different kind of thinking, an inductive kind of thinking. It takes all the pieces and puts them together. The conscious mind sees that the jigsaw puzzle, this piece would fit with that piece. The subconscious is the part that steps back and go, oh, it's going to be a mountain scene. You know, it can see the whole big picture even without all the details put in.
Again, the elevated perspective of what? The higher self or the ego? Well, obviously, it's the higher self that's going to see the cover of the jigsaw puzzle long before all the pieces are assembled. And that's what we mean by conceptual understanding. The German word Gestalt is a real good one.
Whole enchilada works.
Well, for those of us who spend time in the Southwest, it certainly does. And that arrives not logically. That's not a deductive process, right? You don't subtract and deduce and take things apart, which is what logic is essentially all about, to arrive at a big picture. You have to put little details together. I mean, you could be the most logical, rational, reasonable person in the world and very good at breaking things down. But what if you have some observed details and you're looking for the continuity? You're looking for the golden thread. You're looking for this evidence that you have a feeling, some intuitive sense that somehow these are part of one whole thing, but it's not, and then all of a sudden, it intuitively bursts into your awareness as if full-blown. I like Joseph Chilton Pearce's reference to creativity and tuition as arriving as thoughts full-blown, as if they were already thought up someplace else. Yeah, in the depths of the subconscious mind. And you release them and they burst into your awareness. You know exactly what I'm talking about. How about learning to do that on demand instead of waiting and hoping for it to happen?
Yeah, this is the mind that dreams at night. It's constantly a creativity factory. It's making stuff up all the time. It's figuring stuff out all the time. And as Michael said, it's processing your memory and your experiences from the previous days. There's a lot of things the subconscious mind is doing subconsciously below your level of consciousness. What we're suggesting is to bring many of these features conscious. That is, become conscious of your subconscious, become conscious of how the interplay between the conscious and subconscious brings more power to your life. That is, by consciously interplaying with your memory, you can purposely make your memory work better for you. You can have it be its best when you need it the most. You can have it be a consistent joy to you of happy thoughts and memories that it brings back to you. You can make your memory a dear friend that shoots all kinds of serotonin and dopamine into your brain every time you use it. And you love your memory. You just love every time you use it. Or you can be like so many people who most of their memory includes regret, remorse, and embarrassment and shame, and they don't want to go there. You have a choice of what your relationship with your memory is. Consciously, purposely choose to have a joyful, loving relationship with your memory. And then, of course, in doing that, you're bringing your emotions into play. You're consciously choosing to experience a certain emotion, the emotion of joy, the emotion of gratitude, the feeling of gratitude for how great your memory is. So you consciously choose to do that and do it in a creative way. Make up a new way to do it. Now you've got a third one of the aspects. And then as you do that, your whole autonomic nervous system gets reprogrammed in a different way. Your brain literally starts shooting off this great juice into your brain every time you start thinking about memory things. So your autonomic system is reprogrammed, and then you can step back from a higher perspective, see the gestalt, and be really proud of yourself for what you just did. You've taken all of the aspects of your subconscious mind, you've made them consciously work together and made you better, faster, smarter, and happier with less stress and more passion.
Anything that helps you relax. Self-confidence helps you to relax, but it's got to be in context. Humility helps you relax. Having a big ego, quite the contrary, makes you really nervous. But the confidence of knowing who you truly are, and that leads to the humility of the higher self. No longer needing to be separate, you begin to sense your connection to other people, to all people, and to all things, to animals and plants, and beautiful things become even more beautiful. And you feel that rapport, you feel that connection as you experience these journeys into the subconscious mind. Now again, the conscious mind goes to sleep at night, wakes up in the morning. The subconscious is operating 24/7. We're talking about a meditation, a contemplation, an introspective prayer-like state where through breathing and conscious relaxation, you feel safe enough to move in the direction of sleep. And that relaxation alone is what gives us access to the subconscious mind. Now remember, generally speaking, stress carried as muscular tension disables us, makes us more confused and more insensitive, more awkward, likely to become sick. Stress, tension disables, weakens, attacks us. Contrariwise, a breath, choosing to deliberately feel safe, a letting go feeling, relaxation essentially in the body is all that it takes for you to be able to move with awareness into the subconscious, into the imagination, into the levels of mind that, well, usually you only see if you remember a dream in the morning. That's evidence that the subconscious has been working. And there are other elements. There are Freudian slips. There are certain patterns of behavior that reveal to a trained eye the workings of the subconscious mind.
How about arriving at your destination in your car with having no conscious memory of having driven there? There's some pretty good evidence.
Tying your shoe without thinking about how to tie the knot. Sure. Habits. There's so many wonderful things that we can do habitually and ought to be able to do habitually. But having said that, we're talking about a quality of waking up that comes from closing your eyes and moving in the direction of sleep.
That's so cool. It seems counterintuitive, but it's exactly what happens. The more you move towards sleep, the more the subconscious, which totally takes over when you are asleep, knows it's supposed to take over. That's the hint, The closer you get to sleep, the more the subconscious knows it's time to take over. And so what we do is we balance in this place in between awake and asleep where you're not, like wide awake anymore. You're in a place I like to call narrow awake. You're awake, but you're relaxed, and now you've got all the good stuff of sleep, the dreaming mind going full blast, but you also have the conscious mind available to do a little conducting, a little orchestrating.
So notice, in each of these 5 cases, relaxation promotes this faculty, stress and tension erodes it, or makes it more difficult to access. Where did we start? Memory's a prime example. That's where Steve began. Notice the harder you try to remember something, the more stressed you become trying to remember and frustrated at not being able to remember something that may be right on the tip of your tongue. Well, the harder you try, the worse you do, right? The harder you try, the more it eludes you until you quit trying and say, oh, I don't know. Or if you're really smart, maybe you'll say, I'll remember in a moment or two. And then go about your business, stop trying, and what happens? The body relaxes, the subconscious mind opens, and here bubbles up the information that you were looking for. And we see the same thing in sports psychology, where athletes need to try to do the best they can, but at a certain point, if they get too frustrated, too stressed, and try too hard, it'll actually degrade their physical performance. Well, memory's the same way. And then we talked about, in the second item Steve brought up, emotion, the same thing. Nobody ever had clear, profound insight into their emotional feelings while they were stressed. You know, the ahas and the insight comes when you're relaxed. And if you go down through all of these five, you'll see exactly the same corollary. You want access to each of these five faculties of the subconscious mind. You're going to have to relax, breathe, and feel safe. Close your eyes to open yourself to the subconscious mind. That's where it lives.
So those are the five basic aspects of the subconscious mind, and all of them can be left on autopilot, but any of them can be consciously influenced. As you get into this alpha state, you can use your conscious mind, your choice, your volition, to choose to change your autonomic nervous system, to choose to change your memory, to choose to change your emotions, to choose to change the ability you have to automatically take that step back and see the big picture.
So let's do that. Let's go to paradise, as we like to call it. Let's go to a place of perfect peace. The place the brain researchers and the mind scientists call the alpha brainwave level. And so let's go there now. If you just get comfortable, sit up straight, not rigid like a 4x4 or railroad tie or something. I want you to think of yourself as balanced, with your shoulders back and your rib cage open. Do a couple of shoulder shrugs and a few head rolls and get that sense of balance. Feeling relaxed, I want you to begin to breathe. Nice, slow, deep breaths.
Or as you breathe, deeply and release. With every breath comes inner peace. Your mind understands this relaxation sensation belongs to the process of creation of this focused passion state. Anytime you breathe deeply, anytime you release, anytime you move a little bit towards sleep, you feel safe. You feel free. Now you can start to get in touch with what's going on subconsciously.
So that after a few slow, deep, deliberate, conscious breaths, you just allow your breathing to find a natural rhythm. Yield to relaxation, soften like butter on a warm day. And feel that letting go to the core of your body. As we review these five basic faculties, beginning with memory, and allow yourself to realize clearly that stress and tension, effort, nervousness, apprehension, all the words we have for fear and anxiety, make it more difficult to remember. But when you come here with breathing, feeling safe and relaxed, without effort, you let go and allow the memory to come to you. You just don't even reach for it. You beckon the memory and hold your mind open passively and allow it to come to you. Memory is greatly enhanced in these levels of mind.
And emotion lives in your subconscious mind, and what you'll find is absolutely true is the more stressed you get, the less access you have to the emotions that go on in you. As you relax, you find it gets clear in your mind, and you can orchestrate what you feel. Tense up and block your emotions, and what you feel is not what's real. The more you relax, the more you understand your emotions tell you about you, not about other people, but about you and what you can do.
For more than 500 years, illness has often been referred to as dis-ease. There's a stress component to becoming sick. There are several personality profiles, personality types of people who are more inclined to get a certain disease over some other due to their lifestyle, but also their attitudes as well. And so if dis-ease is part of a process of negative thinking and anxiety and fear, then in this third area, relaxation, empowers us, strengthens us, and gives us conscious access to accelerated healing, to pain management, and to our ability to influence our overall health, preventing much of what might have otherwise developed as disease, but for our understanding of the powers of the subconscious and the benefits of feeling safe and relaxed to our autonomic nervous system.
And a fourth aspect of subconscious mind is imagination and creativity. The ability to make things up, to invent new things, to make things better than they were, to be able to use our creative minds in ways that are wonderful and pure, to get logic out of the way and to invent what's new. Creativity can be born in you as you allow yourself to relax and release. Creativity comes with the inner peace.
In conceptual understanding, the big picture, to intuit the context from an elevated point of view, that's expanded awareness, that's higher consciousness. That's the ability to balance deductive logic of the conscious mind, taking things apart to understand, eliminating what you don't want to understand. Conceptual understanding is a complement in that it puts together details, revealing continuity, a kind of a golden thread that unites all of these disparate pieces and often arrives as if with a flash of light, an aha or eureka illumination, as the Greeks called it, an awareness, an ability through some sort of inner light to see that which has been available to us in the subconscious all along, but which now that we make the effort to feel safe and relaxed, we can see as easily as can be.
So once again, the subconscious mind has 5 things to be: memory, emotions, and creativity, the higher perspective of big picture thinking, and the autonomic processes like breathing and blinking. Those are the areas where you can gain more control, where your conscious and subconscious minds can be whole, where they can work together and co-create a life that is wonderful, with habits that are great. You have the power to bring these minds together and do amazing things inside. Take that bold journey and gain more control by letting go and moving deep, and find yourself gaining power on your way to sleep.
And now that you've experienced these moments of narrow awake, in paradise, in alpha, let's prepare to move into the waking state, fully into the conscious mind, wide awake and alert. So feel the cushion supporting you, the floor beneath your feet. Recall in your mind's eye what you'll see moments from now when you finally open your eyes. Quickly review what you've learned about the 5 faculties of the subconscious mind and its extraordinary power. 5 reasons, really, for you to learn to relax and feel safe and access the other 90% or more of your intelligence, both mental and emotional intelligence, in this way. And take a nice, slow, deep breath. Fill your lungs. Hold as you peak. And now exhaling fully, open your eyes, wide awake and alert, back in the room, feeling fine, refreshed, rested, better than before. Welcome back.
And in this place, the conscious mind takes over once again, and the ego does its job of making sure everything's safe out there, but that's okay. We need room for this, but we also need to leave this wide awake place once in a while and go to that narrow awake place where the distance between the two minds is the gap is bridged, and the two minds can come together and work in harmony, which allows for that higher consciousness, that even more expanded way of seeing the universe. So remember, if you haven't recently, go back to the website, focusedpassion.com. We've got all kinds of cool stuff going on at the website. We've got a new gift subscription, 6-month subscription, if you want to send this to your friends. And all those old episodes you haven't seen before or heard before are there for you too. And of course, we always have the send one to a friend gadget, any program that you think will help a friend of yours solve their problems or heal their hearts.
As always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.